My parents kicked me out for disrespecting family values. Now their perfect daughter's husband cheated, and I'm the only one who won't take her back. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and I've always been the disappointment of my family. I don't say that out of self-pity. It's just the truth that's been drilled into me since I was old enough to understand what image meant in our house. My parents cared more about appearances than anything real. We weren't a family. We were a brand. My sister, Claire, was the poster child of that brand. Smart, polished, polite in public, and always saying the right things to make my parents look good. Meanwhile, I was the creative one. I liked drawing, photography, and anything that didn't involve spreadsheets or small talk at charity events. My parents didn't see art, they saw failure. "You can't make a living with a camera," my father would say, shaking his head like I'd confessed to a crime. My mom would sigh, "We didn't raise you to throw your life away on hobbies." Those words used to sting so deeply that I started avoiding them altogether. Dinner conversations were lectures disguised as family time. I'd sit there, picking at my food while they went on about family values, which really meant, do as we say. If I tried to speak up, my dad's voice would sharpen. "Watch your tone. You sound just like those kids with no respect for their parents." And Claire would smirk, sipping her wine, adding softly, "You could learn a thing or two from me." Every insult was hidden behind a smile. Every comparison chipped away at me a little more. I tried for years to earn their approval, getting part-time jobs, showing them my work, trying to share pieces of my world, but it was never enough. I was always the one who didn't understand what family meant. Looking back, maybe they were right about one thing. I didn't understand their version of family, and I never would, but it would take one brutal night for me to realize just how disposable I really was to them. If I was the family's embarrassment, Claire was their crown jewel. My parents spoke her name like it was a prayer. Our Claire, the one who never gave us trouble. She went to college on a scholarship, married Daniel, a wealthy guy with a clean jawline and perfect manners, and posted pictures of their dream life every Sunday morning before church. My parents would beam at their phones like she'd just cured cancer. "See, son, that's what family pride looks like," my dad once told me. "She makes us look good." Meanwhile, I was trying to stay afloat working freelance photography gigs and designing local ads for small businesses. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every time I brought it up, my mother would purse her lips. "Why don't you just get a real job?" she'd say, in that tone that made me feel 12 again. Claire would chime in, smiling sweetly. "He just needs time to figure it out, Mom." The fake sympathy in her voice cut deeper than their insults. When I started dating a girl named Emily, a kind, grounded woman who didn't care about money or appearances, I thought maybe things would change. But when my parents met her, their smiles were tight and cold. "She seems." "Nice," my mother said, which was her polite way of saying, "not good enough." Claire barely acknowledged her at all. Over the next few months, every visit turned into a competition I never signed up for. Claire's new house, Claire's charity work, Claire's promotion. Every conversation was about her success, every silence filled with the unspoken comparison. Why can't you be more like her? Eventually, I stopped visiting. It wasn't out of anger, it was self-preservation, but the guilt still followed me, whispering that I was abandoning them, even though they'd never truly accepted me. I didn't know it yet, but my absence would soon become their excuse to erase me completely. It happened on a Sunday. My parents had invited me over for dinner, something they hadn't done in months. I told myself maybe it was a chance to reconnect, to bridge the gap I'd been feeling for years. Emily encouraged me to go. "Maybe they just want to talk," she said gently. I wanted to believe her. But when I walked through the door, the first thing my mom said wasn't, "Hello." It was, "You could have at least dressed better." Dinner started awkwardly. My father talked about Claire and Daniel's new house in the suburbs, how that's what happens when you work hard and make smart choices. Claire sat across, From me, smiling politely, while Daniel bragged about his new business venture. I stayed quiet, poking at my food, trying not to react. But my dad didn't stop. "You're almost 30, son," he said. "Don't you think it's time to grow up? Get a real career? Maybe learn something from your sister?" Something inside me snapped. I set down my fork and said, "You mean the sister whose life you lived through because you're too scared to admit she's miserable?" The table froze. Claire's smile vanished. My father's eyes darkened, his voice rising. "Watch your mouth. Don't you ever disrespect your family like that in my house." "I'm not disrespecting anyone," I said. "I'm just tired of pretending we're a family when all you do is compare and control." My mother gasped like I'd cursed in church. "You've changed," she hissed. "You've become ungrateful, selfish, ashamed of where you came from." My father stood up, fists clenched. "Get out. If you can't respect family values, you don't belong here." For a moment, I thought he was bluffing. But the look in his eyes told me he meant it. I glanced at Claire, waiting for her to say something, anything, but she looked down at her plate. Silent. Complicit. So I left. With nothing but my jacket and the realization that my family had just officially chosen their image over me. I didn't know that walking out that night would be the start of a completely different life. The first few months after they kicked me out were rougher than I ever imagined. I crashed at a friend's place for a while, working odd jobs just to keep myself fed. The silence after years of constant judgment felt strange, both freeing and lonely. Some nights I'd catch myself reaching for my phone, about to text my mom or dad, only to remember they'd made it clear I wasn't part of their family anymore. It hurt, deeper than I wanted to admit. But pain can either crush you or carve you into something new. I started taking more freelance work, slowly building a name for myself in the local art scene. Photography became my therapy. Every click of the shutter felt like taking back control over a world that once made me feel small. I began renting a tiny studio apartment downtown. Bare walls, creaky floors, and a window that leaked in the rain. But it was mine. For the first time in my life, I felt ownership over something that couldn't be taken away by their approval. Emily stuck by me through it all. She'd bring me takeout after her shifts, tell me she believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. "You don't need their version of success," she'd whisper. "You're already living yours." It was the first time someone made me feel like being myself was enough. Meanwhile, I heard nothing from my parents. Not a call, not a text, not even a birthday message. In their minds, I'd ceased to exist. But the strangest part? The longer the silence lasted, the lighter I began to feel. Still, a part of me wondered. Was I really free from them, or just forgotten? That question would linger for years, until the day I learned their perfect world was finally starting to crack. It had been almost 4 years since that night. By then, my life looked completely different. I had a small but steady photography business, regular clients, and even a few of my pieces featured in a local gallery. Emily and I moved into a modest apartment together, and for once, my world felt calm. I hadn't heard from my family in ages, and I assumed that's how it would stay, until one afternoon I got a message from my cousin, Jake. "Hey man, heard about Claire and Daniel?" Wild stuff. I frowned, typing back, "What happened?" His reply came fast. "Don't know the full story, but they're saying he's been seen around town with some other woman. Real messy." At first, I laughed it off. Claire's life had always looked too perfect to be real, but curiosity got the better of me. I checked her social media. No couple photos, no anniversary posts, not even her usual blessed captions. Just vague quotes about forgiveness and trust. My gut told me something was off. Still, I didn't reach out. I told myself it wasn't my business, but deep down, I wanted to know how it felt, for them to taste the same hypocrisy they built their lives on. Emily noticed me scrolling one night. "You miss them, don't you?" she asked softly. I shook my head. I miss the idea of family, not them. But the truth was more complicated. I wanted closure, some sign that cutting me off hadn't been worth it, that maybe, just maybe, they realized how wrong they'd been. Then, a week later, Jake sent another message. "It's confirmed. Daniel cheated. Claire's been staying with your parents for a while. They're keeping it quiet." I stared at the screen for a long time. The Golden family was cracking, and part of me felt vindicated. But another part whispered a dangerous thought. What if this is how they pull me back in? It was a rainy Thursday night when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in years. Claire. For a second I thought it was a mistake, but then it rang again. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was trembling. I didn't know who else to call," she said between sobs. "Daniel cheated. He's been seeing someone for months. One of my friends, for God's sake." For a moment I didn't know what to say. I leaned against the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. The same sister who once sat silent while I was thrown out of the house was now crying to me. "I'm sorry, Claire," I said quietly. That's awful," she sniffled, her voice cracking. "I don't even know who I am anymore. Mom and Dad are losing it. They said you'd understand, that you'd talk to me." There it was, the real reason she called. Not because she wanted me, but because they sent her. I could practically hear my parents' voices behind the scenes. "Call your brother. Fix this. Make it look like we're close again." Still, I agreed to meet her for coffee the next day. Emily didn't love the idea. "Are you sure that's smart?" she asked, her brow furrowed. "You've built your peace, babe. Don't let them drag you back." "I just want to hear her out," I said, though part of me knew I was lying to myself. It wasn't closure I wanted. It was proof. Proof that the family who threw me away was finally crumbling under their own hypocrisy. When I showed up at that cafe, I saw Claire sitting alone by the window, clutching a napkin like a lifeline. Her eyes were red, her posture small, like all that perfection had finally cracked open. What she told me next made me realize this wasn't about heartbreak. It was about control. Claire looked fragile, almost unrecognizable. Gone was the polished, camera-ready version of my sister. She stirred her coffee without drinking it, eyes darting toward the door like she was afraid someone would see her there. I feel like my life's over," she said. "Daniel won't even admit it's his fault. He says I pushed him away." She wiped her tears, then hesitated. "Mom and Dad think you could help me." That line caught me off guard. "Help you how?" I asked, keeping my tone careful. She looked up, guilt flickering in her eyes. "They want you to be around again. You know, show people that the family's close, that we're united through this." I stared at her, stunned. "You've got to be kidding me." "No, it's not like that," she rushed out. "It's just, people are talking, and Mom says if you were to forgive them, maybe come to dinner again, it would show everyone we're fine." I let out a dry laugh. "So this isn't about me, then. It's about your reputation. About theirs." Her expression tightened, the guilt replaced by defensiveness. "You don't understand. They're under so much stress." "Stress?" I interrupted. "You mean from the same people who kicked me out because I didn't make them look good enough?" Her lip trembled, but she didn't deny it. "They're trying to make things right," she said quietly. "No, Claire," I said, leaning forward. "They're trying to make things look right." The silence between us was suffocating. She didn't look angry, just hollow. "I thought you'd be better than this," she whispered. "You used to care about family." "I do," I said, standing. "Just not yours anymore." As I walked out of that cafe, the truth hit me like a cold wave. My parents hadn't changed, they'd just gotten desperate, and I was about to see just how far they'd go to protect their perfect image. A few days after that coffee meeting, I got a message from my father. Just 3 words. "Come for dinner." No apology, no explanation, just an order, as if nothing had happened. I should have ignored it. Emily told me to. But something inside me needed to see it for myself. Needed to know if, after all these years, they were even capable of change. When I pulled up to my parents' house, the place looked exactly the same. Immaculate lawn, spotless driveway, curtains drawn tight. The smell of my mother's pot roast hit me the second I stepped in, the same scent that used to make me feel like a child again. Only now, it just made my stomach twist. My mom greeted me with a wide, rehearsed smile. "Oh, look who's home," she said, as if I'd just come back from vacation. My father gave me a curt nod. Claire was already there, sitting at the table with a glass of wine, her eyes tired. The first few minutes were polite. Too polite. My mother asked about my little photography hobby. My father asked if Emily still worked at that diner. Every word dripped with condescension, sugar-coated enough to pass as civility. Then, inevitably, the real reason came out. "We need to stand together as a family," my father began, cutting his steak with precision. "People are talking about Claire and Daniel. It's embarrassing. If we present a united front, it'll quiet things down." I stared at him. "So you don't care that your perfect son-in-law cheated? You just care about what the neighbors think?" He looked up, eyes sharp. "Don't twist my words. This family's image matters. Always has." That was the moment I realized. They hadn't invited me home because they missed me. They'd invited me to play my old role, the obedient son, the prop in their performance. But this time, I wasn't going to play along. Dinner started to feel like déjà vu. Same table, same seats, same unspoken hierarchy. My father at the head, my mother poised beside him, Claire across from me looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. I should have left the second I realized what this really was. A photo opportunity disguised as a reunion. But something in me needed to see it through. Maybe I still hoped one of them would finally admit they were wrong. "So," my mom began, smiling too sweetly, "we're thinking of having a family brunch next week. Maybe invite the pastor, a few close friends, show that we're all in good spirits again." I stared at her. "You want to parade me in front of people you lied to about me?" Her smile faltered. "No one lied. We simply said you needed space. You told everyone I left because I was unstable," I snapped. "Because I disrespected your values." The air went cold. My father's fork hit his plate with a sharp clang. "You're still angry about the past? You brought that on yourself, son. By what?" I shot back. "Choosing a life that made me happy? By turning your back on your family," he said firmly. "And if you were half the man Daniel is—" I cut him off, voice breaking. "The man who cheated on your daughter?" That hit a nerve. My father's jaw tightened, but instead of defending Claire, he turned it on me. "Watch your tone," he barked. "This attitude is exactly why we had to distance ourselves. You're toxic, always playing the victim." I looked to Claire for support, but she just shook her head. "Please, don't start this again," she whispered. "We need peace, not more drama." That was it. The last piece of hope I'd been holding on to shattered right there. They didn't want peace. They wanted silence. So I pushed my chair back, stood up, and said the words I'd been swallowing for years. "You didn't lose me. You threw me away." Then I walked out, heart pounding, hands shaking, knowing I'd finally closed the door for good. But what came next proved that cutting them off didn't mean they were done with me. That night, I drove with no destination, just empty roads and heavier thoughts than I could carry. The rain blurred everything outside the windshield, but it didn't matter. I couldn't see clearly inside myself either. Every word from that dinner replayed in my head like static. Ungrateful. Toxic. Embarrassment. Words I'd heard since childhood, but this time they didn't sink in the same way. They bounced off something new inside me, something solid. I pulled over near the river, turned off the engine, and just sat there. For years, I'd believed I needed their validation to feel whole. But all they'd ever done was take pieces of me and call it love. It hit me then. Family doesn't get to define you if all they do is destroy you. When I got home, Emily was waiting by the door, worry written all over her face. "I was about to call the cops," she said, half laughing, half crying. I told her everything, the dinner, the manipulation, the way they tried to use me again. She listened in silence, then said something that finally broke through my fog. "You don't owe them your pain, love. They built their happiness on breaking you, and you still came out stronger." The next morning, I wrote a letter. Not for them, for myself. I wrote down every memory, every insult, every way they'd made me feel small, and then I burned it. Watched the paper curl and turn to ash in the sink. For the first time, I didn't feel sad. I felt free. I blocked their numbers, their social media, everything. The silence that followed wasn't lonely anymore. It was peace. But peace doesn't always mean the world forgets you, and soon I'd learn they weren't done dragging my name through the mud. A few weeks later, I started hearing whispers. A friend from my old neighborhood messaged me saying, "Hey, just a heads up, your mom's been talking about you at church." I didn't think much of it until I saw the posts. My parents had begun this quiet little PR campaign using the same sanctimonious language they always hid behind. Family is forgiveness. Pride destroys unity. Even when others abandon us, we must stay strong in faith. Each line was vague enough to seem innocent, but anyone who knew us could read between the lines. I was the villain in their story again. Then came the phone calls. Claire's voice on voicemail after voicemail. "They're losing friends over this, you know. People are turning on them. Mom's crying every night. Can't you just help them out? Make a post? Say you've forgiven them." I deleted every message. I didn't owe them a public performance. I'd lived enough of my life pretending for their comfort. But one night, Emily showed me a Facebook post that stopped me cold. My father had written a long, self-pitying essay about a lost son who refuses to return home, even when his family needs him most. Thousands of likes, dozens of "Stay strong, sir" comments. I could almost hear his smug satisfaction. It stung, but not in the way it used to. I didn't feel small anymore. I just felt done. A few days later, Claire texted me one last time. "Everyone's turning against us. You're really not going to help." I stared at her message for a long time before replying, "Now you know how it feels." For the first time, I wasn't trying to hurt them. I was simply letting reality balance itself. They taught me what conditional love looks like, and now they were finally living inside the consequences of it. But the real closure didn't come from revenge. It came from what I realized next. It's been 2 years since that final message, and in that time, I've learned more about peace than I ever did about family. My parents still pretend I don't exist unless it suits their narrative, but it doesn't matter anymore. I stopped checking their pages, stopped caring about the whispers, stopped carrying the weight of their approval. For the first time, my life feels like mine. My studio's thriving now. My work has started gaining recognition. Local galleries, online publications, even a few national features. Emily and I got married in a small ceremony by the lake. No big church, no designer suits, no speeches about family values. Just laughter, honesty, and people who actually loved us. I didn't send an invitation to my parents or Claire. It wasn't out of spite. It was because I finally understood something vital. Closure isn't about getting an apology. It's about deciding that you deserve peace, even if they never change. Every now and then, someone from my old life reaches out to tell me how heartbroken my parents are that I won't reconcile. I just smile politely and say, I hope they find what they're looking for, because I already have. When I think back to everything, being called a disappointment, kicked out, erased from their perfect image, I don't feel bitterness anymore, just clarity. They wanted control. I wanted connection. And when I stopped fighting for their version of love, I finally made room for the real thing. Sometimes late at night I'll look at an old family photo and feel a strange kind of peace. Not nostalgia, not anger, just understanding. For years, they said I disrespected family values. But all I ever did was stop worshiping their lies and start living my truth.